Emmanuel, thank you for joining us. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and for the wonderful introduction. I'm Emmanuel, and like you said, I'm currently based at the University of Southampton. I should also add that this is a joint work with colleagues from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, whose faces I'll share later on, but who have worked tirelessly on this application and the research that underpins this app. In the end, they've just asked me to present because they think I'll do a good marketing job. To give a background as to why we were interested in gender equality and GeNorms in particular, and it's because gender equality is a fundamental human right that's at the core of the Sustainable Development Goals. For those who are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the target as Goal 3 in particular aims to end all forms of discrimination against women, all forms of violence against women, but also to ensure women full and effective participation in equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making. And achieving this goal is important because the inclusion of women in education and employment opportunities has enormous benefits on developmental outcomes such as economic growth and health. And I've tried to also depict that using this circular graph because an improvement in gender equality can contribute to improvement in economic growth, but also improve population health and well-being. For example, women's participation in labor force can empower women to contribute to household decision making, which is currently low in many sub-Saharan African countries, and that can also have a ripple effect on their well-being and that of their children. Despite the numerous benefits of gender equality, significant barriers persist in many parts of the world, including in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is evident in barriers to access to education, asset ownership, employment, but also political participation. For example, only 23 out of 36 countries in sub-Saharan Africa have closed at least 97% of the gender gap in education. Asset ownership is very low. Less than half of women in many countries in sub-Saharan Africa have access to land. Employment or even being in the top executive positions is also very low. And in fact, political participation is also very low in many sub-Saharan African countries. However, gender equality is multidimensional, such that just increasing women's access to education will not be enough to achieve gender equality. Very often, gender inequality are driven by social and cultural norms that discriminate against women and girls. And these norms include beliefs about what a man or a woman can do, should do, or must do across different societies. And it's important to address all of these norms, and it's even possible to address them. And as many studies have shown, they are fluid, they can be challenged, and they can be changed through behavioral interventions that provide education, interventions that target men and young boys have been shown to be successful in achieving this change. And many studies have tried to look at the social demographic dynamics of gender inequality, and these studies have shown that men are less likely to hold equitable attitudes. More affluent people are more likely to have equitable attitudes. Even people who reside in urban areas and cities are more likely to have equitable attitudes. What we do not know, however, is how gender inequality and these norms intersect with other forms of social norms, such that people who hold gender inequitable attitudes may also have other harmful norms or social norms that can impede progress towards ensuring an equitable and just society. And so what we wanted to do in this work is to understand what other social norms intersect with gender equitable attitudes. And like I mentioned earlier, recognizing the complexity and how these norms intersect is important for us to achieve an equitable society in ways that moves beyond simply just gender equality, but also equitable norms around immigration, like I'll show later on. So what we did in this work was to use data from 3 settings in sub-Saharan Africa. We cleaned the data. This data set is a world value survey. It includes information about all forms of values and attitudes towards different dimensions of the society. We cleaned the data, and we fed about 386 features, which social scientists will call explanatory variables, in the data set to machine learning algorithms. We trained the model, and we wanted to identify features from all of these. We wanted to identify key features from all of these 386 features that were most predictive of gender equitable attitudes. And this approach has been shown to generate novel hypotheses and even to understand patterns of behaviors that might be missed using traditional methods. And one key aspect of this work that I'm going to share with you today is how we've been able to identify these norms, but not only just identifying those norms, but also deploying our findings in a Shiny application, which we hope that individuals and communities can interact with to see how their norms in attitudes towards gender equality, but also other social norms can influence people in their environment, in their society, and across the world. In our work, we do find intersectionality in gender norms with several other forms of social inequality, such as social cohesion, immigrant sentiments, religious tolerance, and social class. People who do not want to have persons living with HIV as a neighbor are also not likely to have gender equitable attitudes. People who have negative immigrant sentiments are also less likely to have gender equitable attitudes. People who believe that their religion is the only acceptable religion are also less likely to have gender equitable attitudes. And we do find that the combination of these factors explain with the combination of these factors, we are able to classify individuals as having gender equality or inequitable attitudes up to about 81% in Kenya, up to about 71% in Nigeria, and 67% in Zimbabwe. And what we're finding from this work is that rather than challenging one level of social inequality, we could use a gender lens to identify and address all forms of inequality such that we can ultimately create a just and equitable society for everyone. And based on this knowledge, the question that's been crossing our mind has been, how do we communicate these findings to the communities that we studied? How do I tell my neighbor, for example, that their views about immigrants and people living with HIV will improve progress towards achieving an equitable society? Or how do I explain to someone who proclaims to be gender equitable or gender equality advocate, how do I explain to them that based on all the social norms that they express, they are 2 times or 3 times more likely to oppose certain behaviors or to support a more just and equitable society? And that's how we came about using Shiny Web application. And so we have now bundled all of our resources and our findings into this web application, which we call GeNorms. And GeNorms is powered by Shiny and built on Argon Bootstrap 4 template. And we leverage several resources that have been developed by incredible people in the community and organizations to develop our package. And this includes the Shiny package, Argon dashboard, which of course is our template, but also shinysurveys, which helps us to collect information about individuals, dplyr package for data cleaning, and several other packages. At least based on Martin's presentation, I'm not going to call all of these modules now. I'll call them sections. So our application has several sections. On the one hand, we wanted to let people know what we wanted to achieve with this work. And this includes also telling them the limits of our analysis or our findings. For example, we only know that our models can predict about 77% in Nigeria in equitable attitudes, and Kenya up to about 63% and 61% in Zimbabwe. We do not know how strong these models will be in other settings, and it's important to acknowledge all of these upfront. We also show regional patterns in gender equitable attitudes, but also by region, so that individuals also see how these patterns varies across different communities and which areas might be important for targeted interventions in their countries of residence, but also maybe in other countries for people who do research in these communities. An important part of this work is this part, which is the take the test, where individuals also get a chance to input their answer a set of questions, and then we give them predictions based on what we have learned from people with similar characteristics in our data. And of course, we have a section for our team, which is information about everybody who has worked tirelessly on this application, the affiliation and the likes. So when you click on take the test button on the application, it gives you this interface. This is how it's displayed on a mobile application. And this is just a disclaimer, just to let people know that this application is not 100% accurate. We might say that you do not have gender equitable attitudes or have gender equitable attitudes. that may be accurate or inaccurate depending on what setting you're testing from, and also based on what input data we had access to. When you continue to take the test, we collect information about your age, your gender, your highest level of education, because socioeconomic characteristics have been shown to be also associated with gender equitable attitudes. We also ask questions about other forms of social norms like religiosity, but also, like I mentioned, immigrant sentiments and social cohesion. After answering all of these questions and you submit your responses, you get another prompt, which is also another section where we tell you the prediction. It gives you a prediction about gender equitable attitudes based on the data that you've provided, but also a breakdown by each component, because we believe it's not just enough to tell individuals that we think they have gender equitable attitudes or not, but also to show them the areas that we think they can improve. The areas that we think they can improve. And this is a session in progress, and we would appreciate your feedback from everyone. For example, under gender roles, we'll tell you that these norms and beliefs that we think you hold are also likely to influence several people. Under immigrant sentiments, we tell people about how immigrants contribute to national development in several countries, with a series of examples even across Africa. And we hope that by providing these resources and information to people, we hope that they will see this differently and ultimately change their behaviors and attitudes towards individuals across the different domains. So what did we learn from all of this? We've learned that Shiny can be a great tool for research dissemination and impact. As academics, we might be tempted to think that our work ends at analysis, publishing, or even communicating with the media. But like I said, sometimes it can be challenging explaining that you are 2 times at risk of something or 3 times at risk. Instead, in our case, as we have shown here, complex algorithm can be, like machine learning algorithms, can be bundled into an accessible mobile application for lay audiences without having to explain what odds ratio means, what sensitivity means, or even specificity mean. And we can actually tell and show them how their views can affect people in their communities and how they can change all of these attitudes. So there's the QR code there if you want to explore Shiny application, and there's also the website if you'd like to play with it. We would appreciate your feedback. Feel free to share them, and I'll share my email later on. Finally, I would like to acknowledge everyone. If time permits, I can do a demo, but these are the faces of people who have worked on this application, different aspects of the application, from research, analysis, and application development. And as you can see, we also try to be an equitable team. And of course, there are also people who have also worked in the background whose faces are not shown. And I'm also acknowledging all of that. So like I mentioned, the Shiny application, the GeNorms and the accompanying research was developed as part of the Summer Institute for Computational Social Science that we had at Covenant University last year. The application is still open also for this year, which will be held in Ghana. So feel free to apply. If you have questions, please feel free to get in touch. And I look forward to the discussion and feedback from everyone. And if time permits, do I still have more time to do a demo?
Yeah, I think we have a minute for a demo. I think that would be fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Do you see my screen?
No, we do not. We saw it for 1 second.
Okay. How about now?
Still no. Oh, yes. There we are.
Okay. So this is what the web interface looks like for GeNorms. And like I mentioned,
Emmanuel, I apologize to interrupt you, but the screen has gone away. If you can click that one more time.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that. Great. Do you see it now?
We do.
Oh, great. Thank you. So like I mentioned, this is what the interface looks like for GeNorms. And we have a section, like I mentioned, where we try to describe what we're doing, our approach to doing it, the population from which we've used this data from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and Kenya. So of course, we expect that these applications will be used by people from different settings. So it's important to bear in mind these caveats that our training data is just based on people from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, and Nigeria. And we also leverage several other packages to also show regional patterns. Plotly, for example, you can also view patterns in Nigeria, and it's interesting to see low levels of gender equitable attitudes in the northwestern region of Nigeria, which is typically has been disadvantaged for many years, and higher levels in the southern region, for example, but also gender gradient in all of these. For example, in Southwest, only about 28% of men. So if you take the test, like I mentioned, you get this prompt, which is just an information or a disclaimer. I agree to take the test. And what's my age? Just 29. I'm a male, highest level of education. I mean, just to also mention that many of the information I'll provide here are not true, and it's just to demonstrate how the app works. Lower class in terms of wealth. I use the television very often, daily. To what extent do I agree? My religion is definitely the best. Nothing is better. Having religious authority interpret the law is also very essential to me. I do not belong to any religious organization. It's important for girls to continue school. No, I think maybe girls should stay at home. I mean, like I mentioned, these are absolutely not my view. It's just demonstrating the app again. Girls are ready for marriage once you start menstruating. Maybe disagree. Agree. Are you willing to have people living with HIV as neighbors? No. A boy should marry, yes, and she should honor the decision of her parents. Importance of having women have the same right, maybe neutral. Very good. I have very much confidence in political parties and, of course, in elections. Employers should give priorities to nationals, yes, over immigrants. And immigrants feel useful workforce, yeah, disagree. Quite bad. It's a good thing. Most people can be trusted, no. Okay, and there's no option to submit because I have skipped a question. So I can just go back and find that question. Sure. Yeah. Okay, now it's active, so I can submit. So based on the algorithm and the data you've provided, we think you might believe that men and women should not be treated equally. So based on the responses, I do not have gender equitable attitudes. And there is also a breakdown of how I can change. In terms of immigrant sentiments, I scored very low, and we also try to provide some information, which is quite lengthy, and we're still working on shortening these. But it's just a summary. You scored low on immigrant sentiment. It's a crucial factor in our model. And we explain reasons why you should reconsider your attitudes towards immigrants. There is also gender roles, which is also low. Social cohesion is also low, and several others. And of course, there is an option to share on Twitter if you want to share this result, which is not so good. But of course, you can also share the so good ones and get more people to engage with the application and to see how we can ultimately motivate for a just and equitable society. And that's it. The team, our team in Nigeria, all Accra, there's of course my colleague Fidelia and Dr. Joshua Kim and several others.